We talk a lot about what it takes to win a game of hockey, but what does it take to call the game of hockey? On today's show, we are joined by special guest Max Herz of Predators Radio to talk about his role with the team and what it takes to do play by play for one of the fastest sports in the world.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this special episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio. I am usually joined by my partner in crime, Emma Lingen of the Hockey News. But today I am joined by a very special guest, someone I am so excited to talk with. This is a person whose voice Predators fans will likely recognize right away. I'm going to be joined by Max Herz of Predators Radio. Max provides pregame, postgame, and intermission coverage, and he is the radio play-by-play announcer for Predators road games. He also co-hosts the Predators official podcast and Smashville Live Player Show. Today, we are going to sit down with Max and we are going to talk about his hockey origin story, how he prepares to call an NHL game, and what it takes to do play-by-play for hockey. I am joined now by very special guest, Max Herz. Max, this is an episode I have wanted to do for so long because I am so fascinated by what you do, especially because there is just no way I could do what you do. So thank you for jumping on and revealing all of your professional secrets to us.
Yeah, you told me this podcast is all about my secrets. I don't know if I have any, but you told me that I will figure them out along the way. So I'm excited to figure out my own secrets. But yeah, happy to be on.
We'll see what we learn about Max Herz over the course of this. But always love to start off when we talk to a guest and ask about your hockey origin story. So I'm just curious, when did you start following the sport of hockey? Have you always liked hockey? How did you sort of get into it?
I've been following it probably since I was 5 and got really big into it when I was 10 or so. And I'm from Pittsburgh, so that lines up with Sidney Crosby to the Penguins. So that was kind of how I really got into it really fast and got a chance to follow those teams really closely and went to games at the Igloo, which is one of my favorite sports venues of all time. And now I get to announce games with Hal Gill, who was a part of those teams. So it's pretty incredible to think about that. And I've met a lot of players from those teams who are now in media and some who are still playing. So that's kind of how it started. And hockey and baseball have always been my two favorite sports. And I'm fortunate I've gotten to announce both at a high level, first with Vanderbilt for baseball and now with the Preds and the Big Show.
So you mentioned hockey and baseball. Do you have a favorite sport that you like to play?
I played baseball. I never played hockey, sadly, which I regret, but I didn't get into it at an early enough age, and I also probably wasn't big enough. So I can skate, but
yeah,
I can't
Nick
play.
Blankenberg
I can
wants
play,
you to know.
Well.
Yeah, Nick Blankenberg wants you to know you're just the right size. You can do it.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, he makes me feel good.
When did you know that you wanted to work in sports professionally?
I knew in high school that I wanted to do something in sports. I did not know until college that it was broadcast or media, which I probably should have known earlier because I used to go to games with a recorder and pretend I was announcing the game and sit in front of the TV or video games and announce the game, all that stereotypical stuff that a lot of sportscasters did when they were kids. So probably should have known a little bit sooner. But I found out pretty quickly when I got to college. So I was able to start really doing professional work as a sophomore in college, which was a crazy opportunity here in Nashville, going to school at Vanderbilt. And it set me ahead of schedule on a lot of things and led me to some pretty cool stuff, which I'm very lucky to have had a chance to do.
So you talked about being at Vanderbilt. What did you study in college? What was your major? Did it have to do with broadcasting, media?
It was communications, but it was not really a broadcasting track. And the majority of my experience came with work and internships and professional experience, less so than classroom stuff, because Vandy does not have a journalism school. So a lot of the journalists and sports journalists who have come from Vanderbilt have just done it by working in the student media. And I was quickly turned on to that path.
Yep. You mentioned internships. What were some of the internships you did?
I actually had a press pass for the Predators for 2 years in college, which was cool. I was
Let's go.
inspired by one of my friends who I sat next to on a plane in college, who I hadn't seen in a couple of years, who went to a school in the Boston area. And he said that people from his student newspaper had press passes to the Bruins. And I had never thought about just asking for a press pass, but I did it. And Jerry Helper and Kevin Wilson, who were running Preds PR at the time, said, go ahead. And that worked out really well because as I've come back to the Preds as an adult, they've known who I am and known that since college, even though I really didn't know what way was up and was not fully in any way trained to be doing it, I at least knew how to not totally embarrass myself. So that FaceTime with them was certainly valuable. And that's not why I wanted to do it or why I thought about it or why I made it happen. But that was a great thing. And the majority of my other work was all with Vanderbilt, doing a lot of different things with their athletics. The on-air work I did was for the baseball team there in college, and then also student radio for soccer and lacrosse. So I got to work with a variety of different sports in a variety of different capacities and did a lot of things in TV, radio, stat keeping, PR, SID work. So I got a full variety there, and I never did anything that I didn't enjoy.
Coming up, Max is going to share with us an inside look at what he does to prepare to call an NHL game. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shell variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for those busy days, whether I am sitting here snacking at my desk or in the car on the way to Bridgestone Arena, or if I just know I need a little protein boost, they are always a great go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So you and I have talked before about the skill set that's required to do play-by-play. And I have to tell you, I am fascinated by this because as much as I admire it, I cannot imagine being able to do it. And you have said before that it's one of those things where you almost have to have some sort of a natural inclination for it. So talk me through, what are the skill sets that help prepare you to do play-by-play, to call a game like hockey?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think any of it is really learned. I think I either had to find out if I could do it or not, and I'm lucky that I have the ability to do it. So I think common sense is the first thing, and then the one thing that it really comes down to that I think is the ability to think clearly. And that sounds so simple, but you're just kind of always making a giant list of things in your head and deciding what is most important to come out. Because every single thing you say as a play-by-play person announcing a game with a broadcast partner is a decision. And if something's going on in the game, you're headlining that moment. And sometimes you saw other things, but you're not going to say them and you're going to skip them because something more important is happening or about to happen. And then sometimes you're going to your analyst, and sometimes you're going to break, and sometimes you got to look at the clock and all this stuff. So I think if you can think clearly and articulate what you're seeing, that's kind of the best way to do it. So I don't know. I try to think just as clearly as possible while the game is going on. And I know that sounds so simple, but always just kind of writing a headline for the moment. And the thing I found the first time I did an NHL game for play-by-play was a lot of stuff is going to happen that could be important, but you can't get it all in. So you got to just kind of move on to the next thing when something happens and headline the moment that's going on. And if you need to, you can go back and say more later. But also if you have a former NHL player with you who is also seeing everything, like I'm lucky to with Hal and Jay and Mace and everybody else who we're on with, they'll do a lot of the cleaning up on the back end too. So I think a lot of it comes down to that for me, and other people I think would give different answers. But I think that sums it up from why I think I'm able to see things like that clearly.
Is calling a hockey game more difficult because of just the pace of the game than, say, lacrosse or baseball, or is it just different?
I think it's just different. I think that's the right way to put it. And everybody has their best or worst sports of people who've announced multiple sports.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the one that I don't think I'm great at that I've done is basketball. I just don't think it comes naturally to me. And it's not because I don't like basketball, because I do like basketball. I don't know. It just doesn't stick with me the way baseball or hockey does. And football, I think I feel pretty good with, but baseball and hockey are definitely the two I'm the most experienced with. So I think it's just kind of different, and you put your mind in the right place to set the pace of the sport. And I think hockey sets the pace for itself. So it's just a matter of being able to follow the pace. And I think that's fun. Like my problem, if anything, is I go too fast. So I slow myself down even on hockey.
All right. I want you to peel back the curtain. This is where we start getting into some of the Max Herz professional secrets. We'll deal with the personal ones a little bit later, but talk to me about how much time you spend prepping for one game. How much time, hour wise, minute wise, do you think you put into prepping for one game?
I never really put a time on it. Mm-hmm. I think I just kind of always am staying ready for the next game. And for the Preds, like I think I'm best at doing games for a team. I've never really, I guess I have. For high school football, I've been someone who comes in, announces one game, announcing the Nashville high school football game of the week, seeing a team once, and that's it. Mm-hmm. I think I'm at my best when I'm with a team all the time, because I can get behind that team. I can tell you everything about that team, and the prep for the game is paying attention and going to every practice and interviewing players and following up on things that I find interesting and finding out those backstories and second level things and things like that. So I think that part takes care of most of it. I tend to over prep for the opposing team, and I'll have more information than I could ever possibly need about them. But I want to make sure I have those 2 or 3 things that I could potentially need about every player on the other team, even though most of them probably won't come up on the Predators radio broadcast. But I go through as warm-ups are going on every game, just make sure I've got everybody's names and number on the other team. And like, that is by far the most important thing. If I know everybody's name and number, I can fill in everything else. So there's no time for looking down at the sheet to cheat on name and number. So that's the most important thing. But yeah, I come up with a lot of scribbles. And like a lot of the prep is done along the way too. Like if I over prep for the game, I'm going to be talking about that instead of what's going on in the game. So I think what's going on in the game kind of keeps me away from that stuff in a good way.
You mentioned, not having time to look down at the sheet. This is going to be a strange question. Do you call games sitting or standing, or does it depend?
I think I'm almost always standing.
Thank you. How would you sit and do that?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I have sat, and I think the view is just better when you stand. I'm also short, so sometimes I have to stand the way these booths are set up to be able to like look. Yeah. I have to look up in order to look down at the ice and to see. And it's funny because Hal and I are often cramming into booths together, and he's 6'7" and I'm 5'7", and it's just funny to see us try and squeeze in there, because there are some places where he physically cannot stand because the roof is too low, like in Calgary when we're in a gondola. And there are some places where because I can't see over the table. So it's the world's smallest man and the world's largest man, he likes to say.
I love that. What is in front of you when you call a game? You mentioned a sheet. What do you have on the desk in front of you, and what is written down?
It's a double-sided folder,
Hmm.
just like a manila folder, and I have one sheet of each team. I'll type up the names and numbers in line order,
Hmm.
and that's kind of my basis for it. And then I will handwrite around that with everything else. So uh, it kind of like the stuff I really need to be able to see quickly is just the names and the numbers if I ever do need to look down at that. And then everything else is added on. It's definitely not a perfect system, but it's the best way for me to organize my thoughts and make sure anything I need I can get to relatively quickly.
Every play-by-play person is different. Everybody kind of does things differently. But I'm just curious, have you gotten any advice or what have you learned from listening to and watching Pete Weber?
A lot. And I used to, so I worked at 1025 The Game for a long
Hmm.
time out of college. And that was kind of how I became part of the Preds broadcast crew. And initially becoming a fill-in was just because I was on the staff at 1025 and knew the team. So my job was to edit highlights for a lot of games, which I really, really loved because it was basically like doing play-by-play with somebody else's voice. And pretty much all those games were Pete and Hal, and it would be
Hmm.
me and one other person producing back there. And my only job for the game was to edit all the highlights, just to listen to the game and edit all the highlights as they happened. And when they play back on the broadcast, that all comes from one person. When they go to other outlets, they would come from us. So I really loved that just because obviously I love listening to good play by play. And the best part about Pete and Hal, or Pete and whoever he's with, and now Hal and whoever he's with, because Pete is the one who was his first broadcast partner, is it's all about having fun. Like you cannot be afraid of having fun. And I think in other big jobs before this, I would stray away from maybe making a more fun comment or something like that. And I think the tone of Preds Radio has been set that we are going to have fun with you guys. And we're not going to let that take us away from calling the game, because calling the game is the most important thing. But we're going to have fun and we're going to talk hockey. We're going to get serious. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to tell you when the team isn't playing well. We're going to tell you when the team is playing well. And we're going to have some fun doing it. And I think that all comes from Pete. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned from him. And a lot of hockey specific, less exciting stuff too. But the fun stuff, I think, is what will permeate from him to me.
Besides, of course, doing play-by-play for road games, you host the Predators official podcast. You also host Smashville, the Smashville live show with some players. I am just curious, what is maybe your favorite story or tidbit that you have learned through those gigs about a Nashville Predators player?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think because I feel like there were some from previous years that were really good.
There are some interesting people that have been in that locker room.
Yeah, and it's cool. I mean, the thing I try to articulate, both like this is something that someone who watches every game should think about, and also someone who doesn't really know a ton about the sport, is like these people come from all over the world, and we get to have them here to play for us. And like on the most simple basis, I think that is so cool. So it's just like trying to humanize them through like what is most different about us. I'm trying to think some things that I've used for kind of like end of year stuff when I've rounded up all my interviews and things like that. I did get a good one from Andrew Brunette, the right when he became the head coach. I try to always ask a lot of people, especially coaches, about their families. And some of our new players won't have families. They'll be in their early 20s, whatever it is. But Andrew Brunette's been married for a long time. And I just asked him, at what stage of life did you meet your wife? And what would you like Preds fans to know about her? And he said that they grew up together in Sudbury, Ontario. And they were in school together, and that he had turned her down to skate together at Public Skate when they were preteens, like 11, 12 years old. And then they end up getting back together and they were teenagers, but that she likes to hold that over him. So it's stuff like that, this kind of personal detail. And I'll try and think because there's more and a lot that involve players too. But things like that, where it's like you can kind of show where somebody's coming from, but also with a fun story. So yeah, I think that's the type of thing I really aim for. And it's not something you can go into every day within the grind of a season, but whenever the opportunity presents itself, I try to get there.
I love that because so often fans view players in relation to their statistics. And I love the parts about them that are regular. Like, yes, he is Steven freaking Stamkos, but also, he's a regular guy. I love that. That's one of the things I love best about those shows that you do. Coming up, we are going to do some fun rapid fire questions with Max to learn a little bit more about him and his job. One of the things that we love to do after the podcast is check in with our Locked On Predators insiders. If you are someone who has thoughts on topics that we are covering or questions about the direction of the team, you can join our Locked On Predators insider community via subtext and chat with Emma and I beyond the podcast. You'll get a chance to share your thoughts with us one-on-one, ask questions, and discuss breaking news when it happens. To join our great insider community, you can click on the link in our bio or the description for this episode. Speaking of personal stories, I want to do just some real quick rapid fire Max Herz questions. Are you okay with that?
All right.
Okay. First one, what is your favorite away arena?
Good question. I think my favorite arena is Calgary because it reminds me of the Igloo because it's old and it's the last real barn left in the NHL. So
is that the one where you have to walk up the catwalk?
So that is a myth. You don't actually have to walk that to get there. And I don't know why everyone's like, oh, you have to do it. It's just to look tough on Twitter, I guess. But the first time I ever went there 2 seasons ago, everyone filmed me walking across it. And then I quickly realized the whole thing is symmetrical. So you can get there from the other side. And I actually think it's cooler to get there from the other side because in all 4 corners of the arena, there's a bathroom where you can see the ice from inside the bathroom if you position yourself properly at the urinal closest to the entrance. So I just think it's so old school, and I think it's the greatest arena ever. And I guess we only have 3 more seasons left of it before they officially knock it down, which is sad. But I think it's perfect. I think it's so cool. And I wish I had a chance to see more of the arenas of that generation because I missed them all. So
yeah. See, this is the content we're here for, Max. You say you don't have personal secrets, but you tell us where the best urinals are. That's what we're here for. Okay, what's your favorite city to visit?
We really like Vancouver. We've also been there a lot, though, the last few years. That is the arena I've been the most to. I think even without the playoff series, it still would have been the city I've been to the most. But yeah, it's a great city, and I'd love to be there in the summer, too. I mean, we were there late April, early May last year for the playoffs, and the weather was solid. So it's cool. The Canadian cities are all great. When we were in Calgary one time, we made a detour to Lake Louise, which was unbelievable, and Banff, which was – it was the most beautiful place I've ever seen in person. So I think the Canadian cities are at the top of the list for a lot of reasons. It's nice to go places like Anaheim and Florida in the winter.
Yeah.
But those are great places to go no matter why you're going there. So
true. What is the most challenging hockey player name to say at play-by-play speed?
Oh, good question. I feel like there are a couple I've had trouble with that are surprising, and I'm trying to remember what they are. A lot of guys, like some guys who have like normal sounding syllables in their name will blend in with other words in the sentence.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember who the one was that I keep getting tripped up on. It was something, it wasn't Mikko Rantanen, but it was something like Rantanen where it has very common syllables in it, and then it starts to bleed into the other words of the sentence. Oh, it was Kopitar. I was like, I know Andre Kopitar's name, but I was trying to say something else with like a UP type sound in it.
Yeah.
And I just kept getting across. It was Kopitar and Kempe, and I was trying to say something else. And yeah, it didn't come out the way it sounded in my head initially. But also I'll say things that like I'll say every broadcast, and then I'll end up making a pun accidentally. Like I'll say
the best.
We'll be playing Detroit, and I'll say like it's on the Red Wings right wing, and I'm like, okay, that was a sentence that sounded the same, but If
I
you
love
can say it without tripping yourself up, it's a cool thing to say.
I love that hockey is just jam-packed with Joneses and Smiths. It's just the easiest sport names to call. What is
I
your
kind of like the tougher names though. I don't know. It
Yeah.
sets everybody apart a little bit. And the one other thing I said that I surprised myself this year was, I was just saying who the goalies were coming back from a
Mhm.
break or at the start of the period, and I said, I don't even remember which goalie it was, but I said this goalie is in the New Jersey net, and I'm like, oh, that's a basketball team. Just like stuff like that.
Yeah, you catch it.
Yeah.
Um, we talk about players having game day routines. Do you have a game day routine?
Not like minute by minute like they
Mhm.
do.
Mhm.
If I know what the lines are before morning skate, that's a big plus because then I can start getting my notes down throughout the day. But I'm not going to start putting my notes to paper until I know for sure that that's the sheet I'm going to have in front of me for the game. So,
Mhm.
and I'd rather the lines be right and have fewer notes than have all the notes down and vice versa. So when I don't know the lines, I'll take notes in my notebook throughout the day. If I can get them on the game sheet sooner, the more I'll end up having for the game, the better. But yeah, the earlier I can start, the better. I always like to get to the arena as early as I can.
Mhm.
And I just focus better once I'm there. Like I don't know. I can't lock in until I get there in a lot of ways. So I can get an hour's worth of hotel notes done in 20 minutes at the arena. I found once I get to the booth. So like being there is what really locks me in.
Mhm. Do you nap on game days?
Sometimes only
Yeah.
if I need it.
I nap every game day, which makes me laugh when the players talk about it because I'm like, man, I feel you. different,
Yeah,
different
you're just like
realms
that.
and reasons, but we're just the same. Um, what is your best piece of advice for somebody who is interested in a career in sports broadcasting, or specifically somebody who is interested in doing play-by-play?
Yeah, I would say try everything. Do everything that you possibly can, and every single job you do, whether it's something you stick with or not, will help you get ready for what you end up doing. So I've done a lot of radio production, like I said, talking about cutting highlights at 1025 The Game. I've also done a lot of TV production. So I have an understanding of what a lot of the people I work with do as well, which is really helpful. So
Good.
um, there's no job that you shouldn't take a run at. Um, and I think just doing as many different things as I can, everything has made me better at everything else. So I think that's good. And the other thing I always try to say is find what you're best at and let that kind of differentiate you or be something that leads you into what you're already doing. So I love doing play by play. I don't think I'm the
Mhm.
best play by play person in the world. I think there are a lot of people who are more by the book play by play than I am. But I was told coming out of college by some people I worked with for a summer announcing Cape Cod baseball who were coaching me and evaluating me in broadcast and media that they thought my interviewing was my strongest attribute. And that was at the end of a whole summer of really mostly doing play by play, but doing interviews before games and after games, things like that, same as I do now.
Mhm.
And I agreed with them at the time. And I think since then, I've tried to let what I do in my interviews lead my play by play and kind of differentiate it. So, like, we have all these great interviews, and those things need to come up during the game. Otherwise, I mean, it's great that people hear them too, but it's our most interesting stuff. And like you said, it's stuff that stands out to you as someone who interviews these players as well. So that was kind of my thing that I was like, hey, I need to find a way to have this be a part of the play by play. So
I
it's a
love
little
that.
harder to do in hockey than in baseball because you don't always get moments to use it because the
Mhm.
game starts and stops so abruptly. But in baseball, it was something I was really able to do well. I think I'm still looking for the way I like to do it in hockey. But whatever your strength is, let that be the thing that leads you with everything you do. Would be my
That's
advice.
great. That's great. Here's one that's not super deep, but I think very important. What's your best travel tip since you spend so much time on the road? Best
Oh
travel
God,
tip.
no! My travel tip is don't listen to me. The one thing I am good at is remembering my hotel room number, but other than
Okay.
that, I
That
think,
seems very important.
yeah, I think we had a consensus about this actually, because one of the TV, they did like a TV Q&A type thing with all of our TV broadcasters. And it was
Mhm.
just like, which person on the TV crew would you trust with this or whatever it
Yes.
was? And one of them was like, who's the best traveler or the best packer? And I think everyone agreed it was Mace. But like,
Okay.
so Mace is good. Mace pack's pretty light. Lindsay, I guess, overpacks. I would have answered Lindsay, but everybody else said she overpacks, and they've been traveling with her for longer than I have. Willie is good at everything, so go with Willie. But
Okay.
I would say go with Hal, because Hal like barely brings anything, and I don't know how he does it. He bag chucks, and he's got a backpack sometimes, and that's it. And
That's impressive.
yeah, I don't know how he does it. I don't know where all his, like, I don't feel like I bring very much, but I still overpack. So
You're just more prepared. Don't call it overpacking, Max. Call it more
yeah.
prepared.
Well, for all your travel tips, consult bag chuckers. It's a
Okay.
pretty simple system. That's my
Okay.
advice.
Which is better, Starbucks or Tim Hortons?
I'm not really a coffee drinker.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your drink of choice on the road?
Usually just water.
Okay.
I'll drink Coke sometimes during games if I need caffeine, but
Yeah. Yeah.
no, I'm not a morning coffee person. I know everybody else in hockey is, so I'm
Yeah.
an
They're
outsider in
obsessed.
that regard.
Yeah. I don't drink it either, but they
Oh,
are
good.
obsessed in hockey. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your favorite thing about the atmosphere at Bridgestone Arena for a home game?
Oh, I love it. I've been talking our fans up a lot recently, because obviously the Preds are not playing well right now and not meeting the expectations of the season. And every game is still at least almost completely filled, and the crowd is still awesome. And it is not like that everywhere else, even in places where the teams are doing well. So we should not be taking that for granted. First of all, our fans deserve all the props in the world to continue to come and support the team and create a fun atmosphere that persists even while the Preds are not having their best season. So I think it's kind of the games where you can feel it really early on. Like, oh, like tonight's going to be a fun night. Like everybody's really into it. We got a goal early, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Just those moments, and like, oh, somebody's already going nuts on the scoreboard. Like I love the way the scoreboard has always worked for the Preds. Like you're building characters in the crowd throughout the game.
Yes.
And then they keep popping up over and over again. And I don't think that happened. Like I try to watch the scoreboard a lot at other places we go. And a lot of them have great game entertainment and game presentation, and the fans are great and the music is great. But they don't really do it that exact same way. And I think we're unique in that regard. Like we've got the same clowns popping up over and over again. Like who was out on Broadway? Like who brought it today? Like, and it's not like it's the same people over and over again at every game. It's just like, oh, this guy was caught dancing once. He's going to be up there 5 more times, and it's not going to get old.
It doesn't. It really does not get old. I love that. All right, last question. This may be the most important question. This is really going to reveal a lot about who you are as a person. If you had to choose a pregame song to get ready for play-by-play, to get you fired up, what's your pregame song, Max?
That's a good question. I'm not good at this. I don't know. I don't like listen to music before games a ton. I just like what goes in the arena. Like I let the arena music be my hype music. I actually should have answered this when you asked my favorite arenas. The places with the best music are number 1, the Kings.
Okay.
By far. Like, and also, so Willie and I have a shared agreement on this. The play-by-play booths in LA are at the front of the upper level. Like they're not in the press box. They're mixed in with the crowd, and they're in the perfect spot. So you like really get all the noise kind of funneling down and around into you. And I've said my favorite places to call a game are places where you feel like you're most like in the atmosphere audio wise. Yeah. So I just kind of let the arena music take me. But LA is the best. Vancouver is great. And like we were there so much last year, they kind of repeat the same songs, but in different times throughout the game. So it was kind of like at one point you knew what to expect, but like it got you like the routine of everything being the same and the hype spots for the game. So They did that well. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a song. I'm not good. I don't know. I like a lot of like DJ music and hip
Yeah.
hop. So
When I look at you, that's exactly what I think.
yeah, I didn't like the halftime show though. Is that what you're gonna ask me next?
You didn't like it?
No, I'm a big Kendrick fan.
Yeah.
I don't like the two newest albums, and most of the songs are from the two newest albums.
Okay. I have to tell you, I couldn't have picked him out of a crowd, don't know one word from one song, and I thought it was a banger of a halftime show. I loved it.
Well, I just he basically played all the biggest songs that I don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like I guess I'm old now, but his
Nothing
original.
wrong with that. Age is not a disease, Max. We
Yeah.
always say that here. Age is not a disease. Max Herz, I cannot thank you enough for jumping on and doing this. Like I said, I am just fascinated by what you do and how well you do it. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us and kind of peeling back the curtain on one of those jobs that is mysterious and magical and wonderful. So thanks so much.
It's definitely wonderful. Yeah, I'm beyond lucky to do what I do. So literally anytime you guys want to talk, I'm more than happy to.